All right. If you're a podcast junkie like I am, it can be a lot of work. But there are tools out there that can help you to get started for free. If you click on the Buzzsprout link below, you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card and it will help support the show. Thank you for your time and enjoy this podcast. Sure. All right. Hi, everybody. This is William Summer with the Doomer Bloomer podcast, season 2. Today on the podcast, we have a very special guest all the way from Honolulu, Hawaii. His name is Lane. How do you pronounce your last name, Lane?
Lane Kawaoka.
Lane Kawaoka. And he is a real estate investor. And I have him on the podcast today to share some tips with you on how you can get started on your own investment journey. So Lane is an ex-civil engineer, and he passively invests in real estate all across the United States. And he's currently the owner of 4,500 units. Those are quite a few states there. Texas is one of them. What states do you have property in, Lane?
Mostly in the Sun Belt, so Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Iowa. All of us kind of up there, closer to you guys, and then Arizona.
In Arizona, and these are areas that have been profitable for you.
Yep, we focus in on areas that are more red states, Republican type of states. Not to say anything politically, but when we're the landlords, you want the laws on our side, and also we tend to pick better economic growth states.
Okay, that's fair. My question to you is, how did you start on your investment journey close to 10, 11 years ago?
Yeah, so I kind of grew up walking this linear path. My parents taught me to go to school, study hard, be a good little boy, and work at that job for 40, 50 years. Buy a house to live in, do all that stuff that you're told to do, get out of debt to, which I don't necessarily agree with. But yeah, I went to school at University of Washington, got an engineering degree, started working for a couple of years, and saved my money diligently. Was always pretty frugal. And I bought a house to live in, but because I was traveling all the time for work, I was never home. So I just decided to rent out my house that I bought, and bought it for $350 in Seattle. The mortgage was $1,600, and the rents that I brought in were like $2,200 a month. And to a young 20-something-year-old kid, that was a lot of beer money back then. But then I started to realize, wow, this Cashflow thing is kind of cool. If I just keep doing this a few more times, I'll be able to quit my job and fire my boss. So that was kind of the start of it all.
So you basically started by house hacking, essentially, or what I would call house hacking.
Well, house hacking, like you live in the house. I just moved out and started to live on the company dollar. I've kind of been traveling for work all the time, so I just went 100% travel. Just a rambling man for maybe 3 or 4 years there.
Okay. What would you recommend for a first-time buyer? If you'd never done this before in your life, real estate is just something you've been introduced to.
Yeah, so I think like when people think of real estate investing, they think of the HGTV stuff that you see on TV. What we're going to talk about today is more passive investing. Buy and hold. Right? None of this house flipping, wholesaling houses, none of that type of stuff. I had a good paying job. I was able to save my money, and I used it for down payments. 20% down payments is what we get here in America. So the biggest thing to look out for when you're buying a rental property is, will it cash flow? So we go by this 1% rule, so we call it 1% rent to value ratio. Well, we're looking for properties where you take the monthly rent divided by the purchase price, and we need something that's 1% or higher. for it to kind of make sense. So, a lot of the properties that we'll buy are like $100,000 houses, which when I first started, I thought that was crazy. But most people in America live in these types of housing, and that rents for $1,000 a month. So 1,000 divided by 100 grand is 1,000. But you look in Seattle, California, you'd be lucky to find a place in the ghetto for 400 grand. We don't buy places in the ghetto, by the way, but that will rent for $2,000. So 2,000 divided by 400 grand is 0.5%. That's not going to work for cash flow.
Okay. So you basically you're make sure you run the numbers is your main caution. Don't just get into something blind.
Right. Most investors don't do this. They invest for appreciation. They hope that the property goes up in value. To me, that's gambling. And when the economy goes up and down, they get hurt. Whereas when you're a cash flow buyer, it doesn't matter where you're in the market cycle. You're buying an income stream, right? And this is, I think, where most financial advice kind of goes astray, where they teach us to, accumulate $2 million, $4 million and live off of it in retirement, right? Just put your money blindly in these stocks and mutual funds and have it grow. But at retirement, you need cash flow, right? You need to put food on the table. So why not begin with the end in mind and create mini streams of cash flow today, which is what these rental properties are. And the beauty is, for most of my clients, the cash flow, they don't really need to eat it yet. So the cash flow just goes to buying more and more of these mini pensions, and it just gets exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger.
So what you're saying is, once you start, it's kind of it's a snowball effect. You kind of can roll that into your next property. Is that what you did?
Right. You're taking all the profits and accumulating down payment money so you can go buy the next asset that puts even more money into your pocket.
Okay. And there's basically no limit to the amount of mortgages you can have in the States. Is that correct?
Well, here you can get 10 Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac mortgages in your name and your spouse's name. But, when I got up to 11 rental properties, I started to realize that rental properties aren't exactly scalable. With 11 rentals, which, by the way, I advocate for people using professional property management, because that's not our job. We're investors, not landlords. And this is why you need to cash flow properly. And people want to, that 1% rule is a quick and dirty rule. But if people really want to dig into the numbers, they can go to my website and download my free analyzer. It's passivecashflow.com/analyzer. You kind of dig into all the expenses, and one of those expenses is 10% of the rents need to go to the property manager to pay for that, so you don't have to deal with all that nonsense. But when I had 11 rentals, at a few $100s of cash flow each, that's $3,000 a month. Nothing to complain about, but I don't know what family can survive off $3,000 a month. Most people have this goal in mind of 10 grand a month at least. So now you're talking 30 rental properties. So just to give people a sense, what's it like to be an investor with 11 properties. I had an eviction or two every year, and some kind of bigger issue that happened every quarter, like the tree fell in the house, or there was a hurricane, and there was some kind of flooding here and there. Not a big deal, right? Property manager takes care of it. But if you had 30 properties, multiply that number by 3, and now you're talking about an eviction every other month. It's a kind of big catastrophe every few weeks. Right? It's not scalable. And that's kind of where I came into the apartment buildings and syndications and private placements.
So I see what you're saying. The rule is a little bit different in Canada, but you're basically advocating once you get to a certain level, you should consider it as a business, essentially.
Well, you just you go into even more passive investments, right? These kind of larger deals where you're a passive investor amongst many other passive investors. And it's kind of like crowdfunding. You're going into a bigger, better asset. But when I started out, my net worth wasn't that high. It actually was nothing. So I just bought single family homes because that's all I had access to. Not until your net worth gets to, be at least $500,000 through these organizations and networks private networks kind of open up, right? That you find these type of opportunities. I mean, yeah, there's crowdfunding websites out there, but in my opinion, those deals are just filled by operators who can't fund their deal with their own investors, which is why they have to pay the crowdfunding website and like to get it up there, to get it in front of the masses.
Okay, so you're not advocating people use things like Fundrise or these other online platforms. Fundrise is in the
Yeah,
state.
essentially they are just electronic brokers, right? It's kind of like an eBay. You can sell your stuff anywhere. eBay happens to be one of them, or Amazon happens to be one of them. And these portals take a lot of money. You pay them a lot, right, as the operator of the deal.
Okay.
To me, it doesn't make sense. I mean, we've tried to use them on some of our deals, but the price that they charge doesn't make sense. Whereas if you could just raise the capital on your own, you have an investor base that trusts you, that you worked with in the past, it shouldn't be any problem.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We really don't have those sort of vehicles in Canada right now. They're getting more popular. So you like to follow the counterintuitive wealth rules. So would you explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah. So when I had 11 single family home rentals, a key thing that I started to do is I started to join different masterminds and get around higher net worth investors, a lot of doctors, lawyers, engineers that were 10, 20 years older than myself, much higher net worth. And what I started to realize and learn were different strategies that the wealthy employ. And the crazy thing was, a lot of these strategies are not that hard. They're actually pretty simple, but it's everything that your mom told you not to do, right? Which is
Yeah.
frustrating. And you start to realize this whole system is engineered to keep us all working. I'm just take when, like a simple single family home rental. I mean, like you're making like 30 something percent on your money when you include you're making the cash flow, right? Like how I said, I was making $2,200 a month plus minus the rents and all the expenses. I was making a few $100, at least a few $100 there of cash flow. You're making all these tax benefits, right? What that real estate gives you. Sometimes it can even put you into the red, which is a good thing, right? So you don't have to pay taxes on the gains.
Right.
You get the tenants paying down your mortgage for you. So you're getting that principal build up, the equity build up there. And then you're also, should the property appreciate, which I consider more icing on top of the cake, should it happen, awesome. And you're getting leverage 4-to-1, 5-to-1. So when you combine all those things, you're making, damn near 30 something percent on your money. If you don't believe me, go check out my, I have a video where I did a little whiteboard example and went through all the math, simplepassivecashflow.com/returns. But this is where I was when I first started. I was like, how am I making like 30 something percent in this stinky rental? But my stocks and mutual funds are supposedly only making 8 to 10. That's what they say.
Yeah,
right?
on average.
Right. I'm like, what's going on here? Right. I mean, the stocks. The funny thing is, it goes up 8 to 10%, but when you lose 20 to 30% overnight on something, you've got to come up, 10 to 15% to really recoup that. And I just started to realize, yeah, this whole system is engineered against the hardworking professional out there. And this is the reason why a lot of my clients can get financially free in under 5 to 10 years. Whereas my parents, they had a doctorate degree, they had a master's degree, but they were never really able to get to financial freedom.
Would what book or podcast or YouTube channel would you, let's say book, what would be your favorite book on either real estate investing or building wealth in general?
I would recommend The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. A lot of good fundamentals in there. But guys, like, stop reading books. Just go out and buy a property or play around with my analyzer, right? It's all in the numbers. Get good at that.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much longer than a couple hours to get good at it. kind of sitting there and playing around with the numbers. A lot of this is just doing it, right? Meeting other passive investors doing the same thing, and trying being cognizant of what the mainstream advice out there or the people in the cubicle world that you're working with are saying, because it's all wrong, right? What Cliff and Larry are saying in the cubicle next to you, talking about their retirement, is all wrong. Right? You never take financial advice from people who are not financially free.
No, that's good advice. So we talked about taxes. So
But we can talk about taxes a little bit. I mean, on a single family home, you're able to deduct the price of the asset over 27 years. So the building per tax code, I mean, I'm sure America is a little bit different, but essentially, it's kind of the same, right? You can deduct the price, the portion of the asset as it decays, as the service life goes away. So this comes up as a sort of a paper loss on your taxes, but it could put you into the negative, which again is a good thing counterintuitively, right? Which you don't have this with buying stocks and mutual funds, all these types of things. It's all a capital gain. It's all ordinary income. Or in America, this is passive income, but also have passive losses contributing to zeroing out your taxable burden.
okay.
With some of these larger deals, we do cost segregation. So you're able to extract sometimes 10, 20 times what you are the first year, which is why a lot of sophisticated investors will take that loss and sometimes offset their ordinary income. I have some doctors making 600 grand, and they're able to employ real estate professional status and get their taxes down to under that $300,000 mark. It's effectively saving 150 grand on taxes.
Okay. So what sort of team should you build? So you need to have accountants, lawyers. Do you need to have a real estate professional on your speed dial? How do you start building your team if you want to take this seriously?
Yeah, so you need to, if you're buying single family homes, you're going to need a broker, you're going to need a property manager. And then, I think you start piecing together your team. A lot of these guys are really short-term vendors for you, right? Like a property inspector, right? The guy that goes out, makes sure you're not buying a lemon. Then you're going to need you're not going to really need a lawyer right away, but you're going to need a CPA eventually to do your taxes. I wouldn't necessarily agree to use the old electronic ones that most people use, right? Because it's not going to give you the deductions you're looking for. It's going to, you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else gets. But a lot of these comes from referrals, right? And this is why it's key to build your network, and why I say stop reading books, talk to people, talk to other people doing this stuff, because we all have a finite amount of time and focus. Spend your time building relationships with people who actually do this, so you can kind of tap into their Rolodex and use the proven people that they use.
Okay. We have something like that in Canada. It's called the Cashflow tribe. I don't know if you've heard of this, but you're part of the bigger pockets community in the United States, correct?
I would say that group is more of an active real estate group. I mean, I run my simple passive cashflow.com is kind of more centered around higher paid, higher net worth professionals that we exclusively invest more as passive investors
Oh,
into
okay.
rental properties and private placements. And it's very different, right? Like for a lot of guys making under 50, 60 grand a year, their highest and best use might be flipping a house or running around with their head chopped off, doing all these active stuff. But for myself, when I first started, I had a good paying job, right? My highest and best use was at my day job, or for some of my clients, doing an extra surgery on the weekend, right? Taking another shift at work is going to yield them a lot more money at the end of the day than finding that distressed property, right? But for us, we kind of come to this point where this going into good deals at cash flow that give us passive activity losses allow us to play this tax game, to pay less taxes. And that's really where we're getting that high ROI. And this is really where you start to get into the secrets of the wealthy. right? Why the wealthy get richer? Because they know all these little, they're not loopholes. This is what the government wants us to do. The government wants us to put money into real estate, so other people can live in it. Right? This is how the tax code is written, to give folks like us deductions who put, our skin in the game and kind of move society forward.
Okay. So are you looking for accredited investors right now in the United States? Is that your end goal? Not an
So
end goal.
so I have kind of two sides of my business. I operate apartment opportunities, and we do bring in investors, but we have to build a relationship with them first. The
Okay.
existing relationship with first. On the other side of my business, I run a family office consulting group. The family office ohana is what I call it. So high net worth families kind of join in, and to kind of get this group coaching environment and get the peer group, more importantly, right, with other high net worth families between $1 to $10 million net worth. Um, but other than that, my passion is just to help out the little guy, right? Well, not really the super little guy, but the guy who was misled down this path of go to school, study hard, get a good job. It's just not going to work. Right? If you're just into paying off your debt, that's not aligned with financial freedom. You have to buy assets, and this whole education process about that. My podcast, initially when I started back in 2016, was kind of educate people on how to buy a single family home rental. So people are of lower net worth, check that out, right? That's the starting point. That's where I started back in 2009. But obviously my story has kind of shifted more to investing like accredited investor, private placements, and syndication. But yeah, I mean, my podcast, Simple Passive Cashflow, is kind of just following my journey, and because I think that is the path for most investors. I mean, at some point, people go passive because why are you doing it all for, right? It's to kind of create the lifestyle that you want, to do what you want, with whom you want, where you want, and on your terms.
Absolutely. Um, so you have here, why not to do retirement accounts, CD? I've never heard of this. CDRAs and QRPs. What are those?
Yeah, so retirement accounts, whether you're in Canada, United States, right? It's essentially a deal with the government saying that the government's like, hey man, you can put your money into this vehicle, invest in whatever you want, but we're not going to tax you on the gains, right? But what's not really talked about too much is they want you to put your money into these retirement accounts because they can tax you whatever the heck they like in the future. So a lot of my advice from my clients is to not invest in these types of retirement accounts, which goes against everything that you've been taught, right? But I have four big reasons why you don't want to put money into a retirement program. First of all, most financial dogma is predicated that you're going to be older and make less money. But most of my clients, myself included, are going to make a heck of a lot more money in the future. Therefore, we're going to be in a higher tax bracket, right? So you're seeing, I'd rather pay my taxes today while I'm in a lower tax bracket than in the future. Point number one. Point number two, I want to be able to use this money well before I'm 65 or 70, which is usually the age where you can actually get access to this money. Number three, I mean, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Canada follows America, but how else are we paying for all this government stimulus? I mean, they just pumped $3-4 trillion into the economy, which is probably why the stock market is propped up artificially. How
Uh,
else are you going to pay for all this stuff but to inflate the money supply and to charge higher taxes in the future? Again, another reason why to pay taxes today. And for the last reason, which a lot of people don't realize, and it may not impact some people, but it impacts a lot of people in my world, where we're investing in these deals to get the passive activity losses, like I said, to be able to choose how much taxes we pay. When one invests via a retirement account, you do not get those passive activity losses. So we lose that weapon to pay less taxes when we're investing in a retirement account. So therefore, I'd like to I'd like to get my money out and invest out as cash outside of one of these vehicles.
Okay. So let's say you've already put all this money into these retirement accounts. Is it worth it to just take the penalty and use it as a down payment?
Yeah, I mean, what's the 10% penalty? I mean, yeah, I think they demonetize the whole thing, right? I mean, to me, 10%, yeah, pay that. Probably be in a better deal to make that back in like a year to 18 months. And then it's like the ticket to get to actually better deals and better taxes. Um, you, I think there's you got to do it smartly though, right? So a lot of my clients might have $500,000 or more in one of these retirement accounts and might already be in the highest tax bracket, making $300,000-$400,000 a year. So they got to be careful not to take it all out at one time. So we kind of work with them to build a plan to leak it out very slowly.
Okay. So you're about the passive cash flow investing, and what are your three rules of investing? What
Yeah,
what
so a lot of people they ask me, do you invest in the stock market? Do you invest in crypto? I mean, and I just kind of fall back on these three rules and why real estate is kind of my number one go-to thing. So first thing is, does this thing cash flow? Right? Does this thing put food on the table? Right? Does it achieve my end game, which is cash flow? Being able to live off of the monthly income minus expenses, right? Gold bullion, that doesn't cash flow, right? Crypto doesn't really cash flow. Um, Stocks doesn't really cash flow, right? I mean, yeah, you can get a dividend stock, but then you're not getting the growth upside. Number two, is it leverageable? So here in America, and I'm sure a lot of other places, you get these great loans, right? Banks and the government are kind of begging you to buy this stuff, giving you great financing. And because they believe in it, and it's a hard asset. So, you can't really buy crypto on leverage. You can't really buy stocks. I mean, you can buy stocks on leverage technically.
You could, but it wouldn't be very very good for you.
Yeah, it can get a little dangerous doing that type of stuff. And then lastly, it's a hard asset, right? It's a commodity, right? I mean, gold is a hard asset, but as I said, it's not really leverageable and doesn't produce cash flow. Um, where stocks go up and down, as we've seen, right? What is the price of the stock? It's based on emotion. Um, Whereas real estate produces a commodity, it's a packaged commodity. It's lumber, it's land, it's a roof over people's head that people need. And in this country, and I think a lot of countries, population is increasing, and especially needs a higher level of workforce type of housing. And that's where we specialize in properties that are for the regular person. Rents $700 to $1,200 a month, not the high end, not the low end, right in the middle.
Okay. So what is this max 5% net worth investment size rule? What does that mean?
Yeah, so when investors go into more syndication deals and private placements, you know, the motto is to kind of diversify yourself into dozens of deals at maybe 50. Usually, the minimums of these deals are $50,000. Now, for a guy under $500,000 net worth, that's a lot of money, right? That's definitely creeping over that 5% rule. But this is how high net worth investors invest, right? There might be a great investment, but they stick true to these principles of diversifying, right? I mean, there's a lot of very affluent people out there that have own apartment buildings outright by themselves, but they may have 30, 40, 50, 60% of their net worth into that one building. To me, that's not diversification.
Okay. Um, so have you had any failures, and what did you learn from it in the last 11 years?
I've made some failures in terms of I've done bad money things like pay down debt, where the debt's probably the most valuable asset of this thing. Um, where I should have taken the money and buy a few more properties instead. I've also made mistakes with investing with the wrong people before.
Right.
But in hindsight, I didn't have the network that I have today. And that's for every passive investor, that's just something you're going to have to go through and organically build on your own. that's why, you don't invest more than 5% of your net worth, right? Just talking to somebody who went into a deal for 25 grand, and to them, their net worth was under $100,000. That was a lot of money to them, right? But when you diversify, you're less, it derails, less chance of you derailing the whole train for you. But overall, I mean, look, I invest for cash flow. There's not much that can go wrong, right? I mean, Warren Buffett says the rule number one of investing is don't lose money. And how do you ensure that? But making sure that you're cash flowing positive at the end of every month.
Okay. So what is one thing you'd wish you'd known when you started your journey? Like if you could go back and talk to yourself 10 years ago, what's one thing you'd tell yourself?
Try and connect with more people that are high net worth and actually know what they're talking about financially. People who are really financially free. Um, Everybody's got an opinion, right? Everybody has money, just like how everybody thinks that they're a diet expert because they eat food, right? But a lot of people are doing it wrong out there. And at the end of the day, net worth numbers don't lie.
Okay. And if you were giving advice to someone, let's say me, example, what would you tell them if they wanted to pursue a career similar to yours?
Well, I mean, I worked my day job, my engineering job for quite a while until I quit. And that's what I suggest, right? Figure out what your highest and best use is. For me personally, it was working at my $100,000 day job as an engineer. Yeah, I didn't like it, but that was my highest and best use. So I could take the money, be a little frugal with it, and then take that money and buy more assets such as rental properties and then syndications. Right?
Okay.
I think too many people just kind of they leave a day job behind, and they kind of just go after their dreams, but really their highest and best use, their best chance probability for success would have been at that day job. If you don't make more than 50 grand a year, maybe, I mean, I don't know if I'm the person to kind of follow my advice, but you're going to have to take some chances, right? This is real estate investing. You need money to invest. If you don't have money, you got a money problem. And I'm not the person to help you out to do that.
That's fair. Um, and again, what have been one or two people that have been the most influential to you? Did you have a mentor? Did you get mentored by yourself or?
I mean, I just kind of listened to a bunch of podcasts and just did it, right? I mean, I can't really point to any mentor. In this world, I mean, people's time is so valuable, right? I mean, unless you're gonna pay them 10 to 50 grand, I don't know what mentor you're gonna get, to be honest, right? And I think in this day and age, you have to be resourceful. I mean, that's what podcasts are for, right? There's a lot of free stuff out there. I mean, heck, all the stuff is free on my website. Go read it, right? It's gonna take you time to digest the information, but everything's out there on the internet these days. You need to be resourceful and figure it out on your own. Because no mentor who is legitimately um, successful is going to spend their time with you. Why? It makes no sense, right? Why would that ever happen? So I don't think expecting a mentor is realistic.
No, that's actually pretty fair. um, so as a doomer, how do you start getting on the path to becoming a bloomer? So whether that be with wealth or relationships, real estate investing. Let's say you're in a bad place right now, but what would be your best advice to get on that path?
Yeah, I always say, like, things don't happen to you, they happen for you, right? It's Tony Robbins quote. There were a lot of people during this whole COVID thing stuck at home, maybe lost their job, maybe had to pivot, and they realized that on their current financial path, they weren't going to get to where they wanted to be in that set amount of time. Um, Maybe that's why so many engineers do this real estate investing thing, because they're able to predict based on a spreadsheet what is going to happen, right?
Having
I
an analytical background never hurts, eh?
Yeah, I mean, just being able to predict, but like I can already tell, like listeners out there, based on a certain like income and investing in the retail stock market, mutual funds, I know what's going to happen. We all know what's going to happen. You're going to maybe retire with just enough in 50 to 60 years, right? Do you want that? Because I'm telling you, if you just buy a rental property and you may buy another in the next few years and you kind of walk the path that I did, you're going to be financially free in probably under a decade. It's not going to be the well-beaten path. It's not going to be the mainstream advice, but run the numbers yourself. It works. So there's a proven strategy here that I think is pretty simple. Are you going to diverge off of the current cruise control where you're at, right? If you're 400 pounds and you're gaining a pound every week, we know where you're going to be. Are you going to change what you're doing, right? Same thing here. We know where you're going. Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone and kind of do this other thing and at least educate yourself to get started?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. It's been a interesting year for lots of people trying to, reorient themselves in 2020 and now into 2021.
And people don't change unless there's pain,
Yes.
right? And pain can be good. Pain motivates people. So if you guys are in pain right now, take it and take action and get momentum, which we all know is very important, because humans are very, very resilient. In 3 to 6 months, you're going to get used to the pain as being normal and typical, and you're going to lose that motivation to make a change. And you're going to go back into the slumber and keep walking that linear path that you're currently on if you do not make a change.
All right. One last question for you. How can one be of service to their community in the world? Like, what does that mean to you?
I think everybody has their talents and to help out other people. Myself, I mean, I like to do this podcast. I like to kind of help out people get started, kind of do deals, kind of my passion. And which is why I kind of do it in a scalable manner where I just put it on a podcast and blog, right? My hope is that I can get people financially free so that maybe they can unlock what their true passion is for the greater good, right? Unfortunately, most of us are just going to a day job, spending all our time and energy building somebody else's dream for some kind of company profit, which is how the world works. That's just how the economy works. But it's amazing, some of my clients who reach a point of financial independence, now they have the time and especially the resources to propel what they're really passionate about. Might be dog shelters, might be helping out underprivileged kids, right? Whatever that may be, I think money helps you get there. Money is not everything, but it sure makes a life a lot easier and it gives you options.
Options, yes. Where is the best place for our listeners to connect with you online, either your coaching link or online social media handles?
Yeah, so they can check out my podcast, Simple Passive Cashflow, or go to my website, simplepassivecashflow.com. I would say if they're kind of new at the stuff, start at the start page, simplepassivecashflow.com/start.
Okay. I want to thank you for your time, Lane. This has been a very informative conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, William. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys, and have a great day. This is the best show on planet Earth.
Oh, thank you.